Tonight, when the sun goes down, you're going to flip a switch without even thinking about it. Light floods the room, and life goes on. But have you ever stopped to ask yourself, what would you do if that switch simply didn't exist? For 300,000 years, it didn't. Every single one of your ancestors lived through nights so dark they couldn't see their own hand in front of their face. No light bulbs, no candles for most of that time, just total consuming darkness and whatever fire they could keep alive. Half of every human life, for the vast majority of our history, was spent in the dark. So what did they actually do during all those hours? The answer isn't what you'd expect. It reaches deep into the science of sleep, the origins of human culture, and the very meaning of what it is to be human. And once you hear it, you'll never look at nighttime the same way again. If this already has you thinking, go ahead and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this kind of content reach more people. Drop a comment telling me, do you ever wake up in the middle of the night and can't fall back asleep? And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is a great time. You won't want to miss what comes next. To understand what ancient humans did at night, you have to start with the single most important discovery in human history: fire. The oldest solid evidence of controlled fire comes from Wonderwork Cave in South Africa, dating back roughly 1 million years. 1 million years. That's not just a number. That's the moment the entire human night began to change forever. Before fire, our ancestors behaved exactly like every other primate. When the sun went down, they stopped moving. They found a tree, a cave, a sheltered corner, and they stayed completely still until morning. Because moving at night didn't just mean stumbling in the dark, it meant death. Leopards, genus, wolves, the predators that hunted early humans had eyes built for darkness. We didn't. In a world without fire, the night belonged to them, not to us. Then came the flame. A single campfire creates a circle of safety roughly 30 feet in diameter, about 9 meters. Inside that circle, predators won't come. And this isn't just ancient history. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer communities today have documented that people who wander beyond the firelight at night are still significantly more likely to be killed by predators. The fire wasn't symbolic protection. It was the difference between life and death every single night. But here's where the story takes a turn most people never expect. Fire didn't just protect early humans from the darkness. It gave them something that had never existed before in the entire history of our species. It gave them extra hours. 2, sometimes 4 additional hours added to every single day. And what your ancestors did with those hours, that's where everything gets fascinating. So fire gave early humans extra hours. But what did they actually do with them? In 2014, anthropologist Polly Wisner published a landmark study in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. She had spent years living among the Ruhonzi Bushmen of the Kalahari Desert, one of the last groups on Earth, still living something close to the original human lifestyle. And what she recorded around those fires at night changed the way scientists understand human evolution. During the day, about 80% of conversations were purely practical. Who's hunting where? Which plants are ready to pick? Disputes, logistics, economic negotiations. Daytime talk was essentially work-focused, functional, and immediate. But when the sun went down and the fire came alive, something shifted. The entire character of human communication transformed in a way that Wisner herself described as striking. At night, around the fire, 81% of conversations were stories, adventures of people in distant places, myths about the origins of the world, tales that made the whole camp laugh until their sides hurt. These weren't just entertainment. They were the first time humans consistently thought beyond the immediate present, imagining things that didn't exist yet, people they'd never met, worlds they'd never seen. Wisner argued that firelight conversation is where human culture was truly born. Think about what that fire actually was. It was the first theater, the first classroom, the first church. Every story ever told, every lesson ever passed down, every belief system ever formed, all of it traces back to those quiet, flickering hours in the dark. But as profound as this discovery is, there was something else happening during those ancient nights, something even deeper, something buried inside the human body itself that science only began to uncover in the last 30 years. Now here's where the story gets truly personal, because this next part isn't just about ancient humans anymore. It's about you. In 2001, historian Roger Eckerch published a study that took him 16 years to complete. 16 years of digging through historical records across multiple centuries and cultures. And what he found hiding inside more than 500 documents, 15th century prayer books, personal diaries, medical texts, even Homer's Odyssey was something that had been right in front of historians the whole time, completely invisible. Every single one of those documents referenced the same thing, the first sleep and the second sleep, not one sleep. 2. The natural human sleep pattern for most of recorded history wasn't 8 uninterrupted hours. It was roughly 4 hours of deep sleep, followed by 1 to 2 hours of quiet wakefulness, followed by another 4 hours of sleep until dawn. Biphasic sleep, 2 distinct sleep cycles separated by a conscious interval, was simply how humans slept. And that waking hour in the middle of the night wasn't wasted. People used it to visit neighbors, to pray, to interpret their dreams, to write by candlelight, or simply to lie still and think. A 16th century medical handbook specifically recommended that waking period as the ideal time for intellectual work and deep reflection because the mind, it said, was uniquely clear and receptive in that quiet between the two sleeps. Here's the detail that genuinely stunned researchers. For centuries, translators working with ancient texts had been quietly changing those references. They couldn't imagine that people once slept differently, so they erased the evidence without even realizing it. Which raises a question that cuts even deeper. If this was the natural human sleep pattern for thousands of years, what exactly did the modern world do to it? So historians had found the evidence in ancient texts. But was Biphasic sleep truly biological, something actually wired into the human body, or was it simply a cultural habit that faded over time? That question was answered in 1992 by psychiatrist Thomas Ware at the National Institute of Mental Health. His experiment was remarkably simple, and its results were nothing short of extraordinary. Ware took a group of volunteers and removed all artificial light from their lives for an entire month. No electric lights, no screens, nothing. Just natural daylight and darkness. He didn't tell them how to sleep. He didn't suggest any particular pattern or schedule. He simply removed the one thing that modern life had added to the human night, artificial light, and then he watched what happened. Without a single instruction, every single participant spontaneously developed the same sleep pattern. 4 hours of sleep, 1 to 2 hours of quiet wakefulness. Then 4 more hours of sleep until morning. Their bodies simply remembered. But the most astonishing part wasn't the sleep pattern itself. During that waking interval in the middle of the night where measured elevated levels of prolactin in the participants' blood, the same hormone associated with deep meditation and profound states of inner calm, nobody was meditating. Nobody was trying to achieve anything. Their biology was naturally producing a state of consciousness that most people today spend years trying to reach through practice and discipline. The participants described it consistently, peaceful, unhurried, deeply reflective, a kind of stillness that felt different from anything they experienced during the day. And here's the thing that changes everything. That state wasn't a glitch. It wasn't insomnia. It wasn't a problem to be solved. It was a designed feature of human consciousness, one that the modern world quietly took away from all of us. To understand what we lost, you first need to understand how seriously humanity once respected the dark. The English word curfew comes directly from the French couvre-feu, which literally means cover the fire. In medieval Europe, walking through city streets at night without a lantern wasn't just dangerous. In many cities, it was an actual crime. The night belonged to a different world. 2 predators, 2 criminals, 2 things people couldn't explain. Darkness carried weight. It commanded respect. And for most of human history, when the fire went out, people went still. Then came gas lamps in the early 1800s, pushing light further into the evening hours. And then, in 1879, Thomas Edison commercialized the electric light bulb. What followed was the fastest environmental transformation the human brain had ever been asked to absorb. Within a single generation, one generation, the night that humans had known for 300,000 years simply ceased to exist, not gradually, almost overnight. Today, the average person is exposed to artificial light for 7 to 8 hours after sunset. And the most damaging part isn't even the brightness, it's the wavelength. The blue light emitted by phones, laptops, and LED screens sends a direct signal to the brain that reads as midday sunlight. At 11 p.m., your brain genuinely believes it's noon. Melatonin production collapses. Your circadian rhythm, the deep biological clock that governs sleep, metabolism, mood, and immune function gets quietly dismantled night after night. Here's a number that puts all of this into perspective. Just 1 week of camping with no artificial light is enough to reset the human melatonin cycle by nearly 2 hours. 1 week. That's how quickly the body remembers what it was designed for, which makes you wonder, what else has the modern night been silently taking from us? What if the most common sleep complaint in the modern world has been misdiagnosed from the very beginning? Millions of people wake up in the middle of the night around 2 a.m., sometimes 3, and lie there in the dark feeling broken, feeling like something is wrong with them. They reach for their phones, they scroll, they medicate, they worry. But what if that waking isn't a malfunction? What if that's simply your body remembering something it was built to do, something it has been doing for longer than civilization itself has existed? Think about what we've covered. For 300,000 years, your ancestors gathered around fires after dark. They told stories that built the very foundation of human culture, myths, memories, the invisible threads that connected people across generations. They slept in 2 cycles with a quiet window of consciousness between them, a state so peaceful that their own biology produced the chemistry of deep meditation. This wasn't primitive. This was the original human design, refined across hundreds of thousands of years. And above all of it, every single night without exception, the Milky Way stretched across the sky in full. Not as a travel destination, not as a photograph, just as the sky. That was simply what the night looked like. Stars so dense and so present that they were unremarkable, ordinary, always there. That was the ceiling under which every human dream, every human story, every human sleep was held. And then we flipped a switch, one small, brilliant, civilization-changing switch, and in a single generation, the fire went out. The 2 sleeps collapsed into one. The stars disappeared behind a permanent artificial glow, and the quiet between the sleeps was filled with noise. Most of us inherited this world without ever knowing what had been quietly taken away. If you made it to the end of this video, I genuinely want to thank you, because that tells me everything about who you are. You're the kind of person who questions things, who needs to understand what's really going on beneath the surface of what we call normal. And that's exactly what this channel is built for: content that challenges the stories we've been handed without ever asking for them. Drop "I remember" in the comments if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night and just laid there in the dark wondering why. Because now you know it wasn't a disorder. It wasn't broken sleep. It was your body reaching back across 300,000 years of human history. And if this hit something real for you, hit that like button. It helps more people find this kind of content. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. The next video is already on your screen, and trust me, you're going to want to see it.